Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time. Today is all about you and I working together to create a plan that supports Jordan in the best way possible. And since you're his mom, you know him best, so your input is really important as we go through everything. And since this is Jordan's first IEP, we're going to walk through everything that will be a part of his plan. So this includes his strengths and his needs, the supports that we're recommending, and the specific goals that we'll be working on with him.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Miss Weidenheimer.
You too. So on page 3, I would love if you signed, and this is just for attendance, so you're just saying, I was here, you're not agreeing to anything. Thank you, and I'll do the same. And then on the next page, could you sign just to say that you have been given the procedural safeguards notice?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can turn to the present levels. So this is just basically what I'm saying with more detail. So let's start with what's going well for Jordan. He is such a curious learner. He's determined, he's kind, and in the classroom he does really well when he's in small group and he has that extra support. But we've also noticed some areas where he could use more support. So this is especially in math computation and in phonological skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've gathered this information through testing, work samples, and teacher input. So at this time, do you have any questions for me?
Well, IEPs are kind of new to me. So what exactly is an IEP and how long does it last? And then what's like the purpose of an IEP in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So an IEP is an individualized education program, and so it's a legally binding document that outlines the specific learning needs of your child, so in this case it would be Jordan, and the services and supports that the school will provide to help him succeed. So it's developed by a team, so that includes you as the parent, along with the teachers, like me, I'm the special education teacher. It'll include the general education teacher, some specialists, and others who work with Jordan. And the purpose of an IEP is to make sure that your child has access to the general education curriculum and is making progress, even if they need different methods, pacing, or different kinds of support to do so. So it'll have goals that are tailored specifically to Jordan's needs, and it'll include accommodations and modifications we can make to the curriculum to make sure that Jordan is succeeding. We can meet and make changes at any time to this IEP if we want, but we don't have to wait for the annual review, but that's what's typical. So every year we'll revise it. And we also reevaluate eligibility every 3 years. So that's just to make sure that our plan is still appropriate, unless we all agree it's not needed. So yeah, any other questions?
Well, I see that Jordan's really behind. How will he get caught up? Is what you and the teacher's going to do, is that going to like help him?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and I definitely hear your concern. Yeah, Jordan might right now be working below grade level, but we're not just monitoring that. We have a clear plan in place to support his progress. So the IEP goals that we're going to be going over are designed to target the specific areas where Jordan's going to need that support. And we're using something called specifically designed instruction, which I'll explain more about later. So we're going to be using things like interventions and accommodations in order to help close the gap between where Jordan is and where his age level peers are.
Okay.
And on top of that, we're going to regularly monitor progress. So we're going to make sure that what we're doing is working. And if anytime we need to adjust our approach, that progress monitoring will show us where that gap lays and how we can target it. And we're also collaborating closely with the general education teachers to make sure that our support is happening in all settings, not just in my classroom. So what we're focused on is meaningful growth, right? So our goal is to help Jordan make more than 1 year of progress. And we're committed to working with you every step of the way to make that happen. So any other questions?
Yeah, like how do you actually measure his progress?
Right, so that's what I was just talking about. We'll be measuring your progress or your child's progress using tools that are directly tied to child's IEP goals. So since Jordan is in first grade, we'll be using our grade 1 progress monitoring probes or our curriculum-based assessments. And these are basically short, focused checks that help us see how your child is doing with specific skills like reading fluency or math computation or whatever the goal is targeting. And so we'll collect this data regularly, usually like every week or two.
Okay.
And we can monitor growth and adjust instruction if needed. And so you'll get a formal progress report every 6 weeks. And we'll review all of that data together at the annual IEP. And if at any point you see that your child isn't making progress, we'll meet to talk about adjusting the supports or strategies. So don't worry about how we measure the progress. We will make sure that it's measured, and we will make sure that you see the progress that we're measuring.
Okay.
So now that we've answered your questions and we can move on, in order to qualify for an IEP, our school psychologist had to do some testing on Jordan. So we're going to go over some of those assessment results right here. So some of the assessments give scores that compare how Jordan is doing compared to other children his age. And we usually consider the average range to be between 85 and 115. And so in math computation, Jordan scored a 78 and a 77 in letter and word recognition. So these scores indicate that there's delays in these areas that are impacting his learning. And these scores help us understand where he needs support. And it doesn't define him. So we also looked at how he's doing socially and emotionally, because school is more than just academics. And based on teacher reports and classroom observations, we've seen that sometimes he needs help staying focused in larger group settings, and he may get frustrated with not understanding concepts. And like I said before, he does best in small groups. So this helps us know what kind of environment and supports he needs to feel successful and comfortable. And based on his current levels of being in the 9th and 7th percentile in relation to his grade level peers, we've actually created goals in math computation and letter sound correspondence. And these goals are designed to be realistic and targeted so he can grow in these specific areas over the next year. So on page 16 of our IEP, that's where I've actually listed our goals that we've made for Jordan. So this goal right here says, given a penny, nickel, dime, and quarter, Jordan will be able to identify the name and value of each coin and add random amounts of the same coin, increasing from his baseline of 7% to 80% accuracy on 3 out of 5 trials. And this one is, when given a multi-step word problem involving addition or subtraction, Jordan will identify the important information, the operation needed to solve the problem, and solve the problem, increasing from his baseline of 7% to 80% accuracy on 3 out of 5 trials. Given a worksheet or assessment with 12 one or two digit addition and subtraction problems with and without regrouping, Jordan will be able to add and subtract the problems correctly, increasing from his baseline of 7% to 80% accuracy on 3 out of 5 trials. And the last one is, when presented with 10 CVC real or nonsense words, Jordan will be able to decode each word within 5 seconds of presentation, increasing from his baseline of 6% to 80% accuracy on 3 consecutive trials.
Okay.
So like I said, which is also listed right here, we'll be using progress monitoring tools like our probes and our curriculum-based assessments in order to track progress, and I'll send those reports home to you every 6 weeks. Okay. So now that we've talked about assessment results and the IEP goals, I want to explain what specifically designed instruction, we call them SDI, will look like for Jordan. And this is a really important part of the IEP because it's where we individualize instruction to meet unique needs, right? So SDI means we're not just teaching the same material in the same way as the rest of the class. We're adapting how we teach. We're making modifications or making accommodations so Jordan can access the learning in the way that works for him. For example, since one of his goals is to improve his letter recognition skills, his SDI might include some small group or some one-on-one instruction using targeted phonics and using targeted phonics strategies with lots of repetition and even some visual supports. So we used specific tools and prompts, and we give him the feedback that he needs. Or in math, we might break down the word problems into smaller steps, use some hands-on manipulatives, or give him some visual cues to help understanding place value or number patterns. So here I have a bunch of the modifications in SDI that we'll be giving him. We're not going to go through each and every one of them because that would be a little redundant, but we're going to chunk the word problems. We're going to have some graphic organizers. And I put the location as being in all the classes where that would be necessary, right? So if the modification of the SDI is for chunking the word problems in math, we're not going to have that in reading. So it's going to make sense for what that SDI is, and it's going to make sure that Jordan is actually receiving the education that is individualized for him. Okay? So that's what we mean when we say SDI. So most of his instruction will happen in the resource room, so that's my room, or in the general education classroom, and it depends on the subject. He'll receive about 375 minutes of this specifically designed instruction for reading and math, delivered by me, the special education teacher. And this instruction is more personalized and paced to match his learning needs. So something I want to make sure that we go through is on page 26. This is the last page. So this is basically outlining what I said. When I said 375 minutes of SDI, there are 6.45 hours in a school day. 5.2 of those hours he will be spending with his non-disabled peers. So that means 80% of the day he'll be included in the regular education classroom. And that means 20% of the day he'll either be pulled out or we will push in and we will assist him.
Okay.
So that's what his support is looking like. And before we wrap up, I want to make sure all your questions are answered and your voice is fully part of this plan. So is there anything you'd like to add, change, or clarify, or anything you've noticed, or anything you want us to be aware of?
So you kind of touched on the pulling out or being supported in the classroom. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question, and it's really important because that's your child's support. So it's based on what's written in the IEP. And we always try to match the service delivery to what helps them learn best. So since this is Jordan's first IEP, it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, in a sense that I'm not going to say we're going to do like all push in at this point, because we don't know the full extent of what Jordan needs at this point. But right now we're going to try to give him more of a push in service so that he can be included with his peers. But if we determine that maybe his need is more of a pull out kind of thing, then we can do that. So for example, maybe he'll be fine if we push in for reading, but maybe he'll need more of a small group for math. So that'll be something that we'll monitor as the weeks go on. So in other subjects like science or social studies or gym or anything like that, he'll be in the classroom with all of his other peers, and he might have support from either the paraprofessional or me, depending on the schedule.
Okay.
And we're always looking at the least restrictive environment. So that means, how can we include Jordan in the gen ed classroom with all of his peers? And we want to provide effective support inside the classroom. But if a smaller setting is what's needed to help Jordan make progress, then that's what we'll do. So once this plan is finalized and signed, we'll begin implementing it right away. And like I said, we'll check in regularly, and I'll always be available if anything comes up or you have any questions or you want to meet before the next scheduled review. So I just want to wrap up by saying thank you again for being here and for working with us. And we're really excited to work with Jordan and help him grow this year. So if you have any final questions, please ask. But if you do not have any questions, you can sign on this line. This is saying that you are in agreement with everything that's outlined in the IEP, and we are going to move forward with implementing.
All right. Well, it was very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.